Welcome back, everybody. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at a skill called building up fractions. And the first thing to do is to know why we would do such a thing. Building up fractions is a skill that you use when you're adding fractions, which is not something we're talking about at this moment, but just kind of a prerequisite skill that you need in order to add fractions and also to compare fractions. For example, if you want to know if 5/6 or 7/8 is larger, how can you do that? So that's the skill that we're looking at here. And it uses the fundamental property of fractions. The fundamental property of fractions we saw when we were doing simplifying fractions. And so let's review that now. So the fundamental property of fractions says that if you have a fraction a over b, that you can multiply the numerator and denominator by some number k. Sorry about that. You can multiply the numerator and denominator by some number k. That is, a times k over b times k is the same as a over b. You can also divide the numerator and denominator by that number k as well. And our goal when we were simplifying, of course, is to make the fraction simpler, make the numbers in the fraction smaller. So, for example, when we just simplify 6/16, we would recognize that both 6 and 16 are divisible by 2, and so we're going to divide 6 by 2 and 16 by 2, and so that will give us 6 divided by 2 is 3, and then 16 divided by 2 is 8. And 6/16 then we'd say reduces to 3/8. Let's go ahead and try these other two. So negative 20 over 18. Here again, the numerator and denominator happen to be divisible by 2. And so if we divide by 2, we'll have negative 10/9. Okay, 12/34. Sorry, looks like I made all these divisible by 2. So let's make one that's more interesting. Let's make this last one 12/36 instead. So 12/36, here the numerator and denominator both divisible by 2, 3, 6, and 4 and 12. We could take our biggest bite out of it by dividing the numerator and denominator by 12. So let's do that. So 12 divided by 12, of course, is 1, and 36 divided by 12 is, of course, 3. So that, just to kind of review, is how we executed simplifying fractions. What we want to do here in this video is look at a process that is a lot like the opposite of reducing or simplifying a fraction. And I call it building up fractions. So what we're going to do is write the fraction 1/2 first with a denominator of 8, and then we'll go from there. So we want to see 1/2. We want to have an equivalent fraction, but one where it has a denominator of 8. So remembering that the fundamental property of fraction says we multiply and divide the numerator and denominator by the same value, you look at the 2, say, okay, well, 2 gets multiplied by 4 to make 8. So then we would want to multiply the numerator by the same value. So 1 times 4 will be 4. So this will give us 4/8. And then you have enough experience now to know that if you simplify 4/8, you'd be back to 1/2 again. And so what we've done is we've unsimplified that 1/2 to turn it into an equivalent fraction of 4/8. Okay, so now for the second part of the question, we're going to write 1/2 with a denominator of 42. So let's try that. We have 1/2, and we're going to have it equivalent to a fraction that has a denominator of 42. So then once again, you need to ask yourself, well, what would I multiply 2 by to get 42? In other words, what is 42 divided by 2? 42 divided by 2 is 21. So 2 times 21 is 42. Of course, if we're to follow the fundamental property of fractions, and we are, we have to multiply the numerator by the same thing. So 1 times 21 is 21. And so our final answer here is going to be 21 over 42. And once again, I'd invite you to go ahead and at least mentally simplify that and ensure that you get the fraction that we started out with. All right, so now we're going to try this again. We want to write the fraction negative 2/5 with a denominator of 10, 40, and 75. So try those, and then let's go through them together. All right, so let's see how these turn out. So if we want to find a fraction that is equivalent to negative 2/5, but with denominator 10, you can see that 5 would get multiplied by 2 to make 10. And so we would need to multiply the numerator by the same thing. So negative 2 gets multiplied by 2. This will give us a negative 4. So then our final answer is negative 4/10. Okay, next for negative 2/5, here 5 times 8 makes 40, and negative 2 times 8 makes negative 16. So then our final answer will be negative 16/40. Okay, lastly, we want to turn this into 75ths. So this one may take you a little more thinking. Here we need 75 divided by 5, and that will be 15. So 5 gets multiplied by 15 to become 75. And so we'd have to multiply the numerator by 15 also. Negative 2 times 15 is negative 30. So this would give us the fraction negative 30/75. All right, so we've succeeded in unsimplifying or unreducing or building up these three fractions. So let's move along. One thing to notice, or you probably noticed by now, is that with simplifying, there's one correct answer. You simplify it as much as you possibly can, right? With building up, there's the answer you get depends on what the new denominator is that you're trying to make. So you'll need to be told, or you need to figure out what that new denominator is going to be. Okay, so let's try a few more. Let's do A through C first, and then we'll come back and look at the last three. So once again, pause the video and see how you can do with those first three, and then we'll go through it together. Okay, so for 3/4, you can see that 4 would get multiplied by 5 to make 20. 3 times 5 is going to be 15. So we would have 15/20 for A. For B, that's a little bit trickier because you need to remember that 4, which is a whole number, is the same as 4/1. Right? So then once we've done that, we could say, well, 1 times 9 is going to equal 9, and 4 times 9 will equal 36. And so 36/9 will be our fraction that is equivalent to 4. And then in hindsight, you can say, well, of course, 36 divided by 9 is 4. Okay. All right, 8/3 into 24ths. 3 times 8 is 24. 8 times 8 is 64. So we'll have 64/24. Okay. All right, so let's try the next three. We want to turn 1/3 into 6ths, so we need to multiply by 2. It's kind of fun and relaxing. 3 times 2 is 6, 1 times 2 is 2, so get 2/6. Okay, for 5/7, if we want to make that into 21st, 7 will get multiplied by 3 to make 21. 5 will get multiplied by 3 to make 15. So this will give us 15/21. All right, last up, we have 1/4. For that one, you should recognize that you're going to multiply the numerator and denominator by 4, and that will give you 4/16. All right, so that takes us to the end of our first part on building up fractions. In the next part, we have a little bit more to say about building up, and then we'll look at how you can use this same technique to compare fractions and see some examples. In the meantime, let me know if you have any questions and have a great day.